Welcome back, guys. This is Gaming with Austin, and today we are on episode 110 of the Sims 4 series. Today, let's get this on. Let's get it on. As soon as this household loads up. What's good about the fat acceptance movement is that being fat can actually have a pretty good advantage in strongman competition. Because trying to lift half a ton is not just about having strong muscles. It's also about having strong bones too. If you want strong bones, you need enough body fat to absorb that vitamin D. What? Let's give him food. Right now. $100. I know the frame rates are kind of choppy. I have to admit that. And some people find it hard to get a job. Truth is, as climate change worsens, our food supply would become more scarce. Our food, well, at the same time, our food would not be as nutritious. So basically, what that means is, in order to get that same nutrition, you'd have to eat more of the same type of food. You'd have to eat more of the same food, just to be healthy. Basically, what that means is we'd have a more and more overweight generation than previous. Is it me or is it the computer? Which can be a good thing if you can't absorb enough vitamin D. problem with starvation experiments is that, if done successfully, it'll always lead to death before the experiment becomes successful. Because one thing that'll happen is that people and even animals can become preoccupied with food. Even animals can become preoccupied with food. It's not just humans. The reason we need to see human food as dog treats is that the kibble we're giving our dogs is not natural to them. It's not what their bodies are designed for. And some people are simply born addicted to sugar. Sometimes it takes more than just willpower to fight obesity. Because some people have a genetic mutation that causes leptin resistance. It's really not our fault we're making our kids overweight. It's because a lot of the industrial wastes that go into the air we breathe can screw with the hormonal system. It's really not entirely our fault we're making our kids overweight. It's not entirely the child's fault either. Because there are factors that are beyond the control of the child. Some of those factors that are beyond the control of the child are also beyond the control of the parent. Meaning neither the child nor the parent can help it. Because of hormonal disorders. The hormonal systems responsible for appetite regulation. When it gets out of whack, whether it be due to Prader-Willi syndrome or simply senescence, the problem with couples having only one child is a 4-2-1 problem. The 4-2-1 problem. The 4-2-1 problem is one of those things we can face. Children can potentially face the 4-2-1 problem. So it's really not entirely our fault. It's really not. There are some factors that are beyond the control of the family for the obesity epidemic. Because, you know, there are people out there with genetic disorders that can have an impact on their appetite. An example of such is Prader-Willi syndrome. Meaning, if your child has it, the best thing you can do is to put all the food under lock and key. Put the food under lock and key. Has indeed checked for Prader-Willi syndrome. Fortunately, I don't have it. If I did, all the food I would have would be kept locked up. If I had Prader-Willi syndrome, all my food would be kept locked up. Kind of like the case of Connor Hayback. The case of Connor Hayback. Connor Hayback. And Connor Hayback's an example of Prader-Willi syndrome. Connor Hayback is an example of Prader-Willi syndrome. You do that, Mom. There's a starvation hunger. There's a miss a meal type hunger, and there's a starvation hunger. There's a starvation. There's a missed a meal type hunger, in which you get. There's a starvation hunger. A starving hunger is the worst type of hunger you'll feel. It is the worst type of hunger you can feel. Like, that type of hunger is constant. And that constant starvation hunger feeling that people get is caused by something called Prader-Willi syndrome. It is caused by something called Prader-Willi syndrome. If you want strong bones, you need to store a certain amount of body fat. You need a certain amount of fat reserves. A fat in reserve. For some people with type 2 diabetes, the only way to help treat it would be to lock up all the food. Put all the food under lock and key. To make sure they don't eat themselves to death. Because that can become a problem. It's not entirely our fault that we're making our kids overweight. Because sometimes neither the parent nor the child can help it. Toddler's hungry. Time to feed him. There are overweight people who simply cannot help it. In fact, some of them were born like that. There is also congenital obesity too. In which you're born overweight. In which you're born overweight. In which you have a high birth weight. And the high birth weight can mean a greater risk of obesity later in life. And obesity, it's not... It is a product of pumping out so much industrial waste. If you're born into an obesogenic environment, you're more likely to become overweight. Even if you leave that environment. Being born into an obesogenic environment can put you at risk for obesity regardless. He is hungry. Let's feed him. I'm having a workout right now. There are some scenarios in which being fat is actually healthier than being lean. Storing fat can help with muscle recovery when you're training very intensively. So it's really not entirely our fault that we're making our kids overweight. It's really not entirely our fault. It's really not entirely our fault. Telling a fat person to lose weight is like telling someone who is born addicted to heroin to quit taking heroin after a relapse. Some of them just can't help it. It takes work to lose weight. Whether it be expending more than you consume, so it's not entirely our fault. Because if you're born into an obesogenic environment, your likelihood of becoming overweight increases. So it's not entirely our fault. What America needs to stop doing is blaming obesity on the individual. Because some of it is genetic. were born addicted to drugs. It's kind of like telling a drug addict to stop doing drugs, especially if they were born addicted to drugs in the first place. Being underfat is basically it has the same health risks as being underweight. It does in fact, it has the same health risks as being underweight. One of those health risks associated with being underfat is that your bones become rather really easy to break. Your bones can rather become pretty easy to break. Sometimes it's good to be fat. Especially if your body has a higher requirement for the lipophilic vitamins. You know, those with a very thick layer of subcutaneous fat, while having very little visceral fat, are at the lowest risk of health problems associated with being under fat. And the lowest risk of health problems compared to those who are centrally obese. And central obesity is worse than obesity alone. Believe it or not. The truth? Not all overweight people end up with heart disease. Because it's a matter of where your body is storing the fat. It's not about how much, it's more of about where your body is storing it. You know, it's more of about where your body is storing the fat. And sometimes it... The reason it's also good to be fat is in case of a famine. And sometimes fat loss is not healthy. How? Some people are at a greater risk, have a higher requirement, have a greater need for vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and or vitamin K. Huh. I'm not trying to offend people that are overweight. But you know, I praise you for the fact that you can absorb all the nutrients you need in case you hardly ever go out in the sun. Which means that you'll have some vitamin D in reserve. The reason to support the fat acceptance movement is that there are some people out there who need to be fat in order to be healthy. Because they have a greater requirement for vitamin D. Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and or vitamin K. And the problem with having too little body fat, your bones can actually become really brittle from vitamin malabsorption syndrome. The sumo wrestlers would probably get a good workout. Their workout's less likely gonna suck, compared... But in the off-season, on the other hand, they can absorb more vitamin D. Anyways, this should be it for this video. Don't forget to leave a like if you liked this video. Dislike if you disliked it. Subscribe for more. Don't forget to share this with your friends on social media. And as always, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. And peace out.